Today, I have a special guest with me, and I'm excited to have her here. Please join us in welcoming Angelina Strike Stevens to CRE8 Force. Angelina, how are you?
I am great. I'm so grateful to you and Kai for having me on today. I really appreciate you guys and the conversations you guys are creating out there.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for joining me. And likewise, I'm excited to actually chat with you today. For anyone watching who may not know who you are, can you just share a little bit about yourself and what got you started on this journey?
I retired just over a year ago today from active duty. So that is always a sentimental and reflective question these days. Once you leave service, you'll realize you take that uniform off and that journey takes on a whole new meaning to you. I came into the Air Force into my number one choice of career field, which was aircraft maintenance. Some might call that crazy. I felt like that's where I was meant to be. And especially as an officer, people try to steer you towards flying something. And I kind of had to fight that off because that is not where I was meant to be. It's not where I wanted to be. And I haven't regretted that for a minute. I didn't have a lot growing up. I worked 3 jobs to get through college. And I remember getting pretty emotional. I was at Tinker Air Force Base, my first assignment. And I got that first paycheck. And it was more than my 3 jobs combined had ever been. And I was only
Mhm.
working one. And I had medical insurance for the first time in my life.
Right.
And I think just walking into and stepping into that experience for me, I always wanted to be on teams. I had played team sports, and I was drawn to the military. But I realized, especially once I came in, that uniform is like the great equalizer. Doesn't matter your background, doesn't matter your pedigree. And especially as an officer, you can get that imposter syndrome about degrees. And I didn't go to any Ivy League schools or anything like that.
Mhm.
But everybody's on the same playing field. And that was really special for me. And I saw that change a lot of people's experiences through their time in service. I miss being with my maintainer family every day. My career definitely took a lot of twists and turns. It was nothing that anyone would call standard. But my experience in maintenance is really what shaped me as a leader. And it wasn't until I stepped out of maintenance into the Pentagon, which I don't always admit out loud, but I ended up there twice, not maintainer's first choice of, windowless cubicle farm.
Right.
But I ended up there twice, including my last assignment. And I really realized how valuable that perspective from maintenance was once I stepped into an arena that was cross functional across those other career fields in the Air Force. And I spent my last 3 years in the Pentagon working for our CSAF at the time, General C.Q. Brown and Secretary Kendall, and had the chance to work with leaders across the department on things that fell so far outside of my comfort zone. And I got to learn and grow through that experience. And our focus across all of the functions in the Air Force was to create integration, follow through, and impact,
Mhm.
which was a significant problem in a lot of areas. In my last years, I was also lucky enough to get to work with an incredible group of people. After my own experience sharing stories on mental health and suicidal ideation, I was able to connect and help. I was able to connect and help SimSAF Bass at the time and SimSIF Toberman to stand up the Fortify the Force initiative team. And I was able to work with service members, spouses, retirees, civilians who were all fighting to improve mental health, wellness, and resilience for their own unique communities. And in my last 4 months, I was asked by General Brown to run a cross-functional team on mental health, wellness, and resilience, and was just grateful to join that team, to be a part of that effort. It's frustrating and dealing with bureaucracy. I dealt with a lot of politics and bureaucracy in those last years and was
Mhm.
far away from my flight line roots. But I also learned a lot and saw the passion and people like you and Kai that are out there trying to make changes and trying to create conversations. Really lit a fire for me. And it was really incredible seeing people out in the field making a difference, connecting with leaders. In things that they were passionate about. And so I retired last November, left active duty, still stay connected with that team of folks as well. And then I was lucky enough to be asked to join a team focused on leadership development with industry in Victory Strategies, which I've been working with them since this spring. And I'm also going to be stepping back into the arena in the veteran space in different ways after my time in the Pentagon. I'm really just grateful to have the flexibility to be able to kind of give my passion, my energy to both of those things. So appreciate you guys, the conversations you're creating, and asking me to be on with you today.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, one, thank you for your service. I wanted to start there. Man, everyone's experience while they're serving is just different. Every time I talk to someone, every time Kai talks to someone that's a veteran and they talk about their experience, it's all so different and unique. but it's also what's allowed us to be who we are. So to get us started, I actually wanted to start with leadership, right? Because it's something that both of us value a lot, and everyone looks for different things from their leaders. If we're honest. So I wanted to ask you, what are skills or traits that you personally look for someone that's either leading you or your teams?
Yeah, I think it's so funny because that definition evolves over time and over your own personal experiences, right? And you and I both have come from very technical career fields in some ways.
Hmm.
And it's easy to rely on that technical knowledge or look at it as, what you know and how you're managing things. And I think leadership at its core goes beyond those things that, have to do with the technical aspect. And
Hmm.
it's your people and it's connecting with them. And especially once you enter into a leadership role, which as an officer, I stepped in day one. And I was very lucky to have, back in the day, they were all crusty old senior master sergeants, chiefs that had been in that job for 10 years. I will age myself hardcore because they all move every 1 or 2 years now. And
Yep.
I had a senior master sergeant who grabbed me and he's like, I was in charge of 120 airmen the day I entered the Air Force, which is a crazy, weird experience.
Mm.
I had been waitressing and slinging tools at Home Depot, and all of a sudden they go, "Hey, you are their leader."
Mm.
And I'll never forget the first day or so I was in the job. He shut the door, and I'm sitting there at my desk, and he goes, "Okay, in 30 minutes, there's going to be 120 people out on that shop floor, and they're going to want to hear from you, and they want to know your leadership philosophy, and they have been struggling, and here's some things you need to know." But more than anything, they just need to hear from you. And I know
Mm.
you don't know what you're going to say yet, but you got 30 minutes to figure it out. And he would do the same thing anytime we had a disciplinary action or something. The first time we had somebody that was getting an LOR, he shut the door and he goes, "They're reporting into you and you're talking first because they need to see that you're the leader." And I was so lucky to have people like that forced me into that position and helped me realize, I could do the management stuff. I could do all the little things in the administrative stuff, which some people rely on, and that's 90% of it.
Hmm.
And I had people teach me and show me that that wasn't what people needed. They needed someone to be in there and clear the way for them and to feel like if they had a problem or if they were facing a barrier, that they could come to you. Or if they didn't have the answers, that I wasn't going to go and pretend like I did, but we were going to figure it out together. And wasn't going to be that person that stood up in front of them and just act like I know everything. Because guess what? Day one, 120 people on a shop floor, I didn't know anything.
Right.
And I had, those NCOs and people with me that taught me it was okay to admit that and to be a little bit more vulnerable about my own experience and go, but I'm sure as hell going to put every little ounce of energy I have into helping figure it out. And
Hmm.
that was my role. My role wasn't to micromanage them. My role wasn't to be the technical expert. It was to be a leader. And day by day, there was no playbook for that. It was just fill the gaps and jump in and be the person that was willing to jump into a pickup game. And then as I grew into, more senior leadership positions and then stepped into viewing leadership through a lens of the Pentagon and generals and, SES civilians and all these people. And I'm the fly on the wall watching and kind of crazy kind of human experience watching that play out in the walls of the Pentagon. And you realize beyond just being there and listening, it's the follow through. And I think a lot of people pay lip service to leadership, and it's
Mm.
easy to come up with the words to say and to say meaningful things, which is where, again, that senior threw me in that arena first. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to say the things they need to hear,
Hmm.
but it's your actions that
Hmm.
that define your leadership. And then beyond that, it's the follow through afterwards, because people will take dramatic actions and then they'll go, "I did the thing. Like I
Hmm.
walked away, I did the thing." And what I found, especially the higher I got, is that whether for bandwidth or just for lack of resources or just lack of perspective, people often neglected the step after the action, which were those feedback loops and that follow through and listening to see if, what was happening with the people that you were intending to impact, and then doing the hard work to keep getting after it and to keep creating meaningful dialogue in whatever arena you were in.
Hmm.
To me, that leadership is that complicated process of sticking with it and staying plugged in and admitting you don't know things and being willing to hear, "Hey, that thing you did didn't work.
Yeah.
It's not working. We don't know why." And you
Yeah.
thought it would and we thought it would, but we failed and we got to start over, or we got to pivot because that had a negative impact we didn't think it would have. And a lot of people are either not plugged in enough to hear that, or not willing to, or it's just bandwidth and task saturation and burnout. And so it
Mhm.
takes a lot to stick with things beyond that point of initial action.
No, that's good. No, no, I like that because the two themes that I'm hearing within that is vulnerability as a leader, just to be able to own and say like, hey, I don't know this. Like I don't know. Right. But the other side of when you say that follow up, it is so crucial, especially when you're talking to those that are lower in the tiers,
Yeah.
because they're the ones that 90% of the time they're being talked to. Right.
Hmm.
And but when they start, let's talk about
Yeah.
like DOC surveys, right? When we start hearing from
Yeah.
leaders, hey, this
Yeah.
this is what the DOC says, here are the changes that we're
Yeah.
going to make, blah, 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 blah. So
Yeah.
on one end, you need to follow up because I need to know that this isn't just lip service. That's one.
Hmm.
But two, to your point, what if there is a plan that's made, but it's negatively impacting us now,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes if there's no follow up on that second piece, sometimes it's easy as a leader to go, wait, why are people complaining? We fixed the thing, right? We gave a
Mhm.
solution, but wait,
Yeah.
but it's not working. You never asked us
Yeah.
if it's actually making things better or if it's making things worse for us. Now, you're also a executive coach as well.
Yeah.
And as a coach, I wanted to ask you, because this is something I'm interested in. Like, what's a piece of advice that you find yourself giving to leaders, like constantly, like over
Oh
and
man.
over and over again, regardless of like industry, whether it's military or not?
Yeah. So I have a client that if they watch this, they're gonna laugh just hearing it. Probably the most common one, because we've said it a lot lately, is just to slow down and breathe and
Mm,
think and give yourself the space, which there isn't always time for it. But I had a leader who worked for me and I get to work with now, who literally would have a schedule time on his schedule for thinking. And it was like no distractions, no interruptions. He's not signing things, he's not doing things. That 15 minutes, they were small blocks of time,
mm,
was just to open up. I do the digital notebook because I'm a whiteboard person. There's a
yep.
whiteboard right here outside of the screen. And it's like just empty slate. What's in there working that you're working through, just giving yourself time to think. Some people call it strategizing. To me, it's just slowing down enough to reflect, especially as a leader, before you speak in the presence of the people you are leading. And
Mm.
I've talked to people recently, and you go, it's as simple in a meeting as going, I'm going to take 2 breaths before I open my mouth and let words out, and see if anybody else has words that come out, and maybe put a quick thought to mine. And it took me a while to realize, and I learned the hard way several times, um, that when I open my mouth first, you're shutting people down, and you're
Mhm,
either making them go, "Oh gosh, I don't know enough. They just said something I didn't believe, which means I just must not know what I need to speak up," or, "Oh well, that's what they want, so I better shut up and color because they said the thing." And even if you're
mhm,
just brainstorming, because I think out loud a lot, and a lot of leaders do that, a lot of people do that, and it's like, as a leader, you really have to be mindful and purposeful with how you enter a conversation, with how you facilitate a conversation, and sometimes very stubbornly force it away from you long enough to see what's out there,
mhm.
because you can't take that back once you shut it down, and you're not meaning to. You're
Yeah.
doing it in this beautiful open way, and then sometimes you can start to see the eyes and go, there's stuff there and they're not saying it now. Like, what did I do?
Mhm,
um, so I think it's just being mindful of that inherent. Doesn't matter who you are, you could be the best person, you could create the best culture, people could trust you, and your words still kind of carry a weight that slows people down and keeps them from bringing their best selves sometimes, or just makes them hesitate. And then you're losing something, because inherently the 20, 40, 100 people sitting in front of you collectively, they know more than you, and their perspectives are going to paint a better picture than yours is on its own. So you
mhm.
need that first.
Yeah,
I think,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. It's funny enough, like I've been in the meetings where, you can look at people, look across and you can see that people have
Oh yeah.
ideas or they're thinking
Yeah.
things. And
Yep.
then, that leader, whether it's a commander or a platoon sergeant or a first sergeant, speaks up. And then it's
Oh yeah.
almost like the room collectively goes, oh, that's what he said. That's what she said.
Hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
Even though you can tell that like there's a lot
Oh yeah.
that's left on the
You
table
can
that
see
we
it.
haven't even gotten to. But
Yeah.
because to your point, if
Hmm.
you're not even aware of the power of your own voice or your position or your role, you could
Hmm. Yeah.
unintentionally silence people,
Oh yeah.
not even knowing it. So no,
Hmm.
I'm really
Yeah.
glad that you brought that up.
Yeah. And I think it's important to realize that it's not always you. Like you walk into a culture, military, you're changing over so much. So it's very evident, but
Hmm.
it's out there in industry as well. And coaching has really, made me realize how, everybody is dealing as a leader with these same issues.
Hmm.
Whatever came before you and whatever culture was already there and whatever's going on beneath you is affecting that as well. And you can't control that. And I think it's just something to slow down and be mindful of. And yeah, thinking about how you enter a room, how you lead, and how you create the culture where people are willing to challenge you, and your people are invited to challenge you. um, and that's how I gained that perspective. Is there were people that pulled me aside and went, "Ma'am, you need to shut up for a minute and respectfully and well, all the worst phrase in the world, with all due respect, you need
Yeah.
to stop talking at the beginning of the meetings." And I think I had a chief that did that with me once. I've had several first sergeants do it, and they go, you know, you that silence is not agreement. That silence is them feeling like you already had the answer. And I realized
Mhm.
same thing in a technical career field. I've talked to a lot of clients about this as well. When you're in a career field of any sort, whether it be maintenance or, comm equipment or medical or whatever, where you do know a lot of technical things or you're more senior. I spent over 10 years on the same aircraft, so I knew a lot. And I
Mhm.
realized they would stop explaining things to me or stop really having engaging conversations because it was like, well, she knows this stuff already. And I
Mhm.
had to be like, find ways to crack that back open, because some of it was we all trusted each other too much technically, which meant we weren't getting in and challenging each other because we just were assuming past each other that we already knew more. and
Mhm.
and that's a very dangerous and slippery slope too. So it's not always a negative culture or toxic. Sometimes it's just, man, if we're not checking each other and checking our blind spots, um, we're getting worse, not better.
Right. I mean, and that goes for like I think about myself in this way. Like that goes for those of us that are just super passionate about things.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes that passion can just get in the way,
Yeah.
and but also like we don't want to we don't want to take away an opportunity from those that need that opportunity to speak up during the meeting or need that
Exactly.
opportunity, like in certain career
Hmm.
fields. You may have personality differences, introverts and extroverts, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you work in a career field that's primarily has introverts, but they need
Hmm.
that experience to speak
Yeah.
in front of people, but
Yeah.
you're always the person that's the first one out the gate. You're not allowing them to do it,
Yep.
and you don't realize it, but you're almost crippling them, because at some
You are.
point, to your point, the pace of the military, you're going to end up getting moved at some
Hmm.
point, right?
Yeah.
Did you give them enough opportunities to step up? Because
Yeah.
at some point you're not going to be there, or they're going
Yeah.
to end up getting moved to a position to where now they have to lead. Well, if that's their
Hmm.
first time now leading or speaking in front of groups, like that's going to become
Oh yeah.
problematic. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You touched
sometimes.
on an important point though, the personality differences. Acknowledging that that's a thing and that's okay.
Hmm.
It's often just that most dominant personality that rises to the top, and you go, that person who takes a minute to think about it, that's gold, and you want that analytic brain
Hmm.
power feeding your decisions as well.
Hmm.
But just the typical meeting environment doesn't always, lend itself to. So we found, people, you give people the materials ahead of time for a while, or you do one-on-ones, or you do online events where they can talk one-on-one and give their feedback and links in different ways. Like, you got to get creative these days because
Yeah.
people need to process things in their own way, and you're losing a lot if you only listen to those passionate people, which I've been that person too. If I don't slow myself down and engage the analytical side, you go, man, you're not getting the best of me if I haven't thought before the words come out, but they'll come out.
Right.
And your decisions and your team won't be as well as good for only listening to those voices.
Like the timing of this and me talking about passion, it's funny. So both of us do keynote speaking.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you this, as a speaker, what's
Mhm.
one thing that you always feel like you have to do before you speak, or like something you always have to do to hype yourself up before stepping on that
Oh
stage,
man.
like something that's like maybe superstitious to you?
Yeah. Oh, see, you bring up superstitious. This is bad because you're gonna like under the rock. I'm lifting the rock up because
Uh-huh.
one, when I mentioned that story about that senior going, "Hey, you got 120 people,"
Hmm.
I used to have, and probably deep down still have going through my veins, crippling social anxiety.
Mm.
So standing up and talking in front of people, I'm not the grab a mic, run around on a stage person.
Mhm.
Um, it's terrifying. And especially in those early days, I mean, I was probably having full blown panic attacks every time I had to go do, a flight call or something like that. And so I really, for me, being a person who prepares,
Mhm.
but then as I grew as a leader and as somebody who was speaking in front of people all the time just by nature of my job, it's like get to know your people well enough, and that's if you're talking to people, not always the gift you have, where you can
Mhm.
get comfortable and realize you're just talking to them. It's just a conversation, and they have perspectives just like you. Um,
Mhm.
it's hard, and it's always hard to get up and I would have never said, "Oh, I'm going to go be speaking in front of people. That's the thing that I'm going to do for a living someday."
Yeah.
Um, but when you realize you have messages and experiences that can help change the world for somebody, or that can help other people step into the best version of themselves, you go, that's it, that's a gift, and you've been put in that position for a reason, whatever your beliefs or anything. Sometimes we end up in these positions where you go, okay, this is a thing I was meant to do. I'm also a very superstitious Italian, so superstitions are rampant for me. I think the slow down and breathe, and just I'm a music person, so there's songs I'll listen to. Where
Hey,
I'm
there we
like,
go.
they actually just, if you my team did an offsite and they did a bunch of PR for it, and it's so funny because I was like, no, why were they recording me? They caught me in a corner prepping for a media thing where I was
Mhm.
going to have to speak into the camera, and I'm
Mhm.
like in the corner with my headphones on, like like do like bopping
Yep.
to something.
Mhm.
I don't know if it was heavy metal or hardcore rap or classical. I have no idea because it's a weird range of things. But they caught me in the corner, like hyping myself with the music to just tune
Mhm.
out the world. And music does it a lot for me because, I know I would do that in command and in some tougher jobs I was in where we were dealing with really dark, difficult stuff every day. And then I
Mhm.
would have to step into something where I'm bringing energy and trying to lead or pour into people in a different light, and you have to find those things that can just reset your head to it. And for me, music has always done that. um,
Mhm.
if I answer the superstitious part of it, we're going to be here all day because yeah, I'm a superstitious. It's my maiden name is Baldarelli. There's a lot of superstition built into that. I have the little lucky charms and the coin that I've had in my pocket since I was forever.
That's
But I
awesome.
think those things help, and everything in my office, there's superstition and stories behind all of it. I'm one of those people where I kind of surround myself with things that help me remember who I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So
Mm.
to me, those things can be pretty powerful because they are just little visual reminders. They help shift your mindset and help you just, step into something as the full best version of yourself for whatever that thing is.
Yeah. Oh no, I am with you when it comes to
What are
music.
yours? You've got
Yeah.
to share one.
Oh
Now you got to share some of
man.
yours.
Oh man, absolutely. So okay, so for me, I start with I have to listen to three songs, and not like three
Okay.
specific songs, but
Specific? Okay. Just three songs.
so I just have to listen to three songs, and so one song has to be a song that I listened to as a kid.
Okay.
One song has to be like a song that I found 5 years ago,
Okay.
and then one has to be one that like I've had on repeat like currently. And the
Okay.
reason why I have those
Okay.
three is because it's a reminder, it's like a timeline, a reminder
Yeah.
of who I am.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, never lose who you were growing up. Never
Okay.
lose like the five
I
years
love
ago
that.
is almost like a reminder that like there's been progression from then to now.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
then the now is sometimes like you can get so busy planning for your future that you don't
Mm-hmm.
appreciate who you actually are in the moment.
Yeah.
And so it's a reminder like, hey, you need to bring all three to the stage or to your keynote or to your workshop because
Yeah.
the next version of you could be in the room,
Yeah.
and they need to know that it's okay that they can be themselves, and that it's okay, and
Mm-hmm.
that where they come from does not
Yeah.
define who they're going to be.
I love that.
um, and so one is
But the
music.
songs change. What are the
Oh
songs?
yeah, the songs change. Oh yeah,
Okay.
the songs
Okay.
absolutely change. What I'll
Okay.
say is they tend to fade in. I'll say like the last one I did, I started with like Frank Sinatra actually.
Okay.
Um, uh, like I call him Frankie. I don't even say Frank Sinatra. I say Frankie.
Okay. Love it.
He's just super smooth.
Yeah.
And I knew the keynote that I was doing was very, I don't want to say serious, but it had a
Mm-hmm.
more serious tone to it. And so I wanted to be calm because I always feel like when a leader's in front, like
Mm-hmm.
their mannerisms really can like dictate how the mood of the room goes. And
Yeah.
so if I'm calm,
Yeah.
or if I feel like, hey, I'm confident, hey, we need to talk about this thing, but I'm here with you,
Hmm.
then it lets
Yeah.
everyone else know, like, we're not going to be frantic about this, like, no
Yeah.
matter what the situation is. So, I mean, it ranges from Frank
Well, that's awesome.
Sinatra to sometimes Michael Jackson to
Love it.
sometimes more current. I'm a rapper by trade, so it's
Yeah.
hip hop is definitely going to be in there.
Yeah.
I just love music. If it's good
I
music,
love it.
genre doesn't matter. But yeah, music
Yeah.
is definitely a superstition. And then what I also say is a superstition. Um, honestly would be like eating like soul food,
Okay.
but like light soul food because you can't be too heavy if you're gonna be on stage.
No,
um
you can be in a
but
food coma on the stage.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
it's almost like this, it's almost like this calming reminder of like Thanksgivings I used to have with my family
Nice.
growing up, and that sometimes the thing that you went up there to say, you
Hmm.
may get in front of that group and realize, hey, we don't need to stick to script. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes you're around the family and the script is just show up, eat food, enjoy each other. And
Hmm.
sometimes that does end up happening. But then
Yeah.
sometimes like people have to give news that you weren't expecting. Sometimes
Yeah.
uh like the adults aren't the ones leading. Sometimes it's the
Hmm.
kids leading. Like some and so it's a reminder to me, the food is a reminder to me to like, hey, be flexible
Yeah.
and know that like if something pivots, it's not the end of the world. Like
Hmm.
let it go because maybe that pivot is what that organization, that team needs to happen. Like maybe they don't need something that's so structured, they just need to
Yeah.
talk, and maybe you just needed to be the person to start the
Yeah.
conversation.
Oh, I love
So
that.
yeah, those two for sure are like
That's cool.
my things.
I think the music, I love how you talk about the energy of it because I find myself, yeah, the it depends. My husband, I had to explain this to my husband a couple times because he's caught me doing the outlet, like when I didn't use headphones a couple times. And I often, find myself talking about tough topics that have to do with suicide, have to do with mental health.
Yeah.
And, you walk into a room full of, 1,000 people or hundreds of people or something like that, and it's like, oh god, I'm talking in front of these people. And the one that I'll listen to in that context is Sound of Silence by Disturbed, the Disturbed version, because
Mhm.
there's something about it. And my husband goes, are you laying on the floor listening to, like, this is, oh, should I be concerned and call someone? There was one time in particular that he was like, and I'm like, no, it's, this song makes me feel better, I don't know what you're talking about. And
Yeah.
it reminds me, like, some of the words, writing songs that that no voices never heard.
Hmm.
And you go, I'm sitting here in front of a group full of people, and they are sitting there thinking they're alone.
Hmm.
And, these stories here, they've never shared and they don't feel like they can. And all I'm doing is helping show them that that's okay. And there are people out there who are in the dark and just need somebody to flip the light switch on. And that song, depressing as it may seem to others, because it's a heavy song, but it goes, no, like, it's about, we're all actually here together, and there's light in it. And it's amazing just listening to it one time, and I go, nope, that's why I'm here. And in that moment, I'm not now anxious about talking in front of these people. We're just all individuals sitting here realizing we're together in the room.
Hmm.
And yeah, some of my other ones, if I'm in a good mood, or if I had a bad day and I need to be in a good day. I had an interview for a job once, and it was on the back end of, I was dealing with some pretty traumatic stuff at work. Like, as a commander, you're
Yeah.
sometimes seeing things and dealing with things that it is hard to get your head up out of. And I had to, like,
Mhm.
jump into it. And you talk about songs that are just on your playlist. One of the songs that was on my playlist was Good Day by Nappy Roots. And
Okay.
I stood there getting ready, and I, like, blasted that song.
Hmm.
And that has now become the song. If I am just, like, in a rut,
Throw it on.
I play that song, and it's like, you're going to have a good day. Nobody's going to die today. And my kids, it's hilarious because they'll hear it roll on my playlist. And my son will be in the back of the seat, and he'll be like, ain't nobody going to die today. And, like, he has bad days. And I'm like, all right, it's cheesy, and other people would just laugh at it. But you go, it helps you, yeah, the Johnny Cashes and the Frankies of the world, or whatever it is
Hmm.
for you. You can't underestimate what those things can do for you, especially, yeah, as a speaker. If you're going in to help give your energy to somebody, you got to give that energy back to yourself first, and you got to figure out a way to fill your cup before you can go out there and fill it up for everybody else.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I got two more questions for you. I got two
Okay.
more. I'm sure when you go on stage or when I've gone on stage,
Yeah.
we understand the importance of connecting to an audience.
Mhm.
And something that I find is super, super important is storytelling. And I wanted to ask you, like, can you speak to that, like, at least to like the balance of storytelling or the importance of it when it comes to
Yeah.
building stronger teams?
Yeah. I think, there's like you said, there's a balance. There's a fine line because we all know those people that come in and all they do is dominate the room with their, hey, here I was. I've been in the fighter pilot community a lot. Everybody jokes about well, there I was. And, they're using hand gestures for flying. Um,
Yeah.
and that's all the conversation is about is hero stories. And that to me, um, isn't the point, especially as a speaker or if you're doing a workshop or if you're connecting with your team as a leader.
Hmm.
But a story as just a bit of context or to help be a launching pad to a meaningful conversation, if you do it right and if it's not dominating, the point of the conversation isn't the story. The point of the conversation is to open a door um, to a meaningful dialogue or a connection that is more powerful than any academic concept or any lecture or any diagram you could throw out there
Hmm.
because it's relatable and it doesn't mean that exact story can relate to people. But again, I talk often on topics of suicide and mental health, and you go, most of my the speeches that I give or the deliveries don't have anything to do with my own story. But when you touch on these small pieces that can be kind of a jumping off point to help people reflect and to help people realize how they could grow as a leader, as a person, how they could kind of take the armor off. And I don't always like the word vulnerability because to me it's not the vulnerability, it's your strength. You take that off and you're actually a bit
Yeah.
stronger when you're not carrying all that shit around, pardon my pardon my French.
No, you're
But
good.
yeah, and I think um a story is a powerful accelerator in a conversation like that, but you can't stop short and just go, now you've heard my story. No, the point is then to create some thought provoking dialogue, even if it's a speech and you're the one talking. um, you have to get to the so what, and you have to get to the bridge of what does that mean to them, and how did that story change you, but also um, how did it open you up to different experiences and hearing other people's experiences and find ways to give them opportunities to share with each other if you can,
Hmm.
or to get them thinking and taking different action. And I mean, there's so much that comes after that story, but when you can string them together a little bit to help people see that personal context and to show them that you're willing to kind of go there a little bit,
Hmm.
it can help them really reach another level of reflection and growth in their own journeys.
Absolutely. The example I
Yeah.
love to give is I was asking a leadership team, hey, what happened to the old, chief stories or first sergeant stories?
Yeah.
And some of them would look at me like, well, what are you talking about? And so the example I give is,
Hmm.
what happened to the member or the leader that would get in front of everyone during a commander's
Yeah.
call and tell a story about an airman that made a dumb decision, or let's just say had a DUI, got caught up, lost rank, thought their career was over, um, going through depression, maybe they were even going through a divorce, et cetera, et cetera. And yet you find out at the end of the story, that's the person that's talking, is that chief in front of
Yeah.
you or that first sergeant. And that the overall point of the story isn't just to tell it, but to say, hey, none of
Hmm.
us are perfect.
Yeah.
um, we all make mistakes, whether that's in our communication skills, whether that's what we do outside of work, or how we
Yeah.
talk to people, or how we respond in emails, or whatever it is. But if you try, you can make it. If you're intentional about whether it's your career or how you lead people, you can make things better, right? And
Yeah.
so I always use that example because I believe we're almost like in this phase of facilitation where
Hmm.
it's all about facilitation. Hey, let's be the conversation starters and let's let everyone like learn from each other. And I think there's value in that. Don't get me wrong, but I also believe that people's stories have to matter too. I don't think people go through things just for the sake of going through things. I personally think for me, everything that I've gone through, I don't even believe is for me. I believe
Hmm.
it's for other people so that
Yeah.
they know that they can get through it. And so
Hmm.
that's why earlier I said the word balance. And I'm
Yeah.
you were spot on about
Yeah.
how they should be used, but I just believe
Yeah.
there's value in it.
Oh yeah, and I think you're right. The fact, it's a really good observation of the fact that maybe we lost that a little bit because I am old enough to remember the old. people ask, how did somebody train you to be a leader? I'm like, I don't know. They just were telling stories all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we had more time for it. Maybe it was just more culturally okay. What
Right.
I saw, and I think I was very blessed and lucky in command. I'm going to call it lucky. We went through a lot of shit in a few years. It was COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It was George Floyd. It was,
Mm-hmm.
the epidemic of suicide kind of coming back up, and all these were standing down because it was
Mm-hmm.
crisis and chaos, and it was really hard. And I had some phenomenal chiefs and first sergeants, rotated through them because the assignment cycles. I was losing chiefs
Right.
faster than I could keep them, but each in their own unique way, we kept finding ourselves in these, just crazy situations where we're sitting on a stage and people are like, you're going to talk about some real hard stuff. And they were willing to share their stories and share their experience, maybe because we had leaders that did it. You had General Brown sharing his own personal experience a little bit. You had
Mm-hmm.
chiefs out there. I've done some work with Todd Simmons, if you've ever heard him talk about his
Yep.
experience with suicide. Like, there were some chiefs and there were some people out there, and they were doing it. And they were showing us that it was okay. We had, at the time, General Holmes was my ACC commander, and he was sharing vulnerable things. And you just go, they made it okay. And
Mm-hmm.
it meant people were finally willing to do it themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
again, in our little bubble, I don't know how it was across. I heard experiences elsewhere where maybe it wasn't as okay, but because we had that ripple effect down, those chiefs and those shirts started doing it. And I had leaders in other units that saw us doing it. And it's like, we were nothing special. We'd been through some stuff. We were sharing it. And they went,
Mm-hmm.
well, yeah, but my troops, our culture is different. My troops won't respect me if they know I am struggling, or, that I'm struggling now. Or
Mm.
if they heard that I messed up a lot, I don't think they're going to view me and respect me in the same way as a leader, or I'm not going to be able to hold them accountable in discipline. That's the big one, right? Especially in the
Mm.
military, you go, that good order and discipline, people somehow twisted it to go, if I show that I've messed up ever, I now can't sign that Article 15. I now can't, you know,
Right.
talk to that airman as a shirt. I went, what happened? Because most of the best chiefs and shirts I ever worked with had at least one Article 15
Right.
in their background, and they talked about it and they
Right.
waved it around, or they had it framed on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a story that taught people and showed people they could get better. And you go, all of us have done something stupid and recovered and learned and grew from it. Because
Mm-hmm.
guess what? Mistakes grow you more than just doing things the right way the first time all the time.
Correct.
But we lost that. And I do think some of the crazy stuff that happened over the last, 5-6 years have started to change that culture. But it
Mm-hmm.
took leaders in very key positions doing it themselves, which then gave commanders and chiefs permission to. Because I think people would say often in command, triad positions, that they were afraid to, because they thought it would, somehow discredit them as a leader. And
Mm-hmm.
I hope we're making strides back to those stories being a huge leadership tool.
Yeah, and I believe that we are, and I think it's just
Yeah.
because just this next phase of members, service members, regardless of branch,
Yeah.
they want to talk about it. Like
Yeah.
they first of all, they have no fear.
I'll say
Let's
they
start there.
need to, because they're going to talk about it. And
Yeah,
if you try
there's
to
right.
try to
There's no
pretend
having
that's
to
not
talk to
happening.
them
Yeah.
about it. Like they're going to
Yeah.
bring it up. Like so,
Yeah.
even if you feel like, even if they're told, "Hey, you guys can't talk
Mhm.
about this," they're just gonna wait for you to leave because they're the
Yeah.
ones still on shift. They're the ones that are
Yep.
staying back when everyone's going home. The
Yep.
conversation is going to be had.
Absolutely.
And so that's the thing that's really encouraging is to know, okay, the
Yeah.
next generation of leaders there.
Well, it's people like you and Kai out there. Like I said, I don't discount that. There's people out there talking. And if more senior leaders listen to things like conversations you guys are having, or did that in their units, or created the space for that
Hmm.
across ranks and demographics,
Hmm.
game changer. Then we're not all just stuck in our singular perspective on one side of the iceberg and the other, pretending like we see what we see is the whole truth. That's never true. But it's hard because I just don't think people are seeking out those perspectives that are different than their own. And you guys are creating conversation. And again, it's hard. I know what you do is hard probably sometimes, because you have to kind of
Yeah.
force people to hear and see things that are very different to what they're seeing, and actually help them realize, okay, it doesn't mean anybody's wrong. We're not in conflict. These are
Right.
just two different viewpoints, and they're both correct and right. But we got to start looking at this from a broader view and realize it's just different sides of the same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot. That's hard for people to stomach when they've been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. And
Yeah.
they look at you and go, how many years, what are you in, single digits?
Right.
And
Exactly.
they,
Exactly.
it's a huge culture shift, but I'm appreciate people like you guys, you know, keeping up with it, makes
Of
a
course.
difference.
No, of course. And honestly, like something for us, because we've heard it, like we've gotten even pushback from the things that we're
Yeah.
doing. And part of it is the fear that by having these conversations that it's going to disrupt the cohesiveness of their teams.
Yeah.
And, our argument has always been, hey, if we have a conversation about something that is making people not feel valued within a
Yeah.
team, if me having a conversation about that disrupts your team, my
Yeah.
argument is that your team wasn't as close as you believed.
Yeah.
And everyone was just showing up because they needed to show up, and they were just kind of just
Hmm.
checking the box, leaving, going home.
Yeah.
Um, the example I always use are my siblings. Like my siblings, we were raised in the same household, are completely different people.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, even in disagreement, to where siblings fight, but my level of respect for them does not change because we disagree. And if me and you cannot disagree on something mission related, or about a tool we're using, or the way that that LOC or that paperwork was administered, if we can't disagree with that and us still come in the next day and have the same level of respect for each other, I don't think the issue is me or Kai or the leader that's trying to have that conversation. I think that is a that's a completely different thing that
Yeah.
needs to be addressed. Um,
Well, and you use the word disruptive. That word, I think that's the key. And when people hear or feel something, if something feels disruptive, but there's passion behind it, and
hmm
there's anger behind it, there's whatever, but you can feel the passion behind it. To
hmm
me, like if you ask what a leader needs to be tuned into, those disruptive, passionate things, those are the most critical indicators and metrics in your team, in your organization, because they're a symptom of something. And
hmm
you've got to create a culture where you can get past it, get through it. And
Right.
if you dismiss it because it's loud and disruptive and uncomfortable,
hmm
you now have created the biggest blind spot. And you've broken down trust, all the things. But disruption is what creates growth. In how many books and things have been written, or about that concept, and it still is the thing that people resist the most, is those disruptive conversations, those disruptive. That's why we have all these innovation and all these things that have been kind of bastardized. So there's
Right.
incredible teams I've watched grow beyond their comfort zone and just do incredible things. The process was deeply uncomfortable and disruptive,
hmm
but that's the growth process. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, last thing. So, for
Yeah.
anyone that's interested to learn more about victory strategies, could you just give us just a little summary about it and
Yeah.
what people should know about it?
Yeah, like I said, it was a really cool opportunity for me to work with the team. And I spent, a lot of years in the military, and that is the thing we all miss the most. You step away from it, and that team element is missing. And I was doing work on my own and out there speaking and doing things. And when they approached me to join a team of just incredible humans from, I mean, we've got folks from all branches of service, Olympic athletes and coaches, and people from industry, family business to big companies, and all these cool backgrounds. Our CEO is an ex-Navy SEAL who is just a really cool story of the American dream. And he was young, got out, and just saw a need and a gap of people approaching. You want to talk about stories and lived experience. People needing leadership development and needing help in the leadership arena, people who have walked the walk and had the experiences and that could be teammates alongside these companies and these clients, and to use those stories and to do it not from one singular perspective, because it's definitely not all military. I'm learning so much from my teammates every day, and you can kind of approach things from such a diverse range of perspectives. It's a really cool opportunity to get out there with just all these companies and clients who are government. We also have government clients, but a lot of businesses, from the tiniest business or small group of people and team to these huge corporations. who just want to grow and want to become the best versions of themselves. And, we have people who do speaking for sure, but we do a lot of coaching, executive coaching, workshops, done some really cool stuff recently with Harvard Business School that's experiential, getting out there, getting teams really engaging with each other. And we're finding these companies that are just going all in and supporting their teams with these resources to grow and learn. And, again, things that we're like we talked about, nobody taught us how to be leaders, but it's really
Hmm.
cool when you see leaders come in and go, nobody ever taught me, but can I help can you guys help teach my people? Cause I wish I had had these resources.
Yeah.
And it fills my cup because it's just helping people through tough times and leadership challenges, which is what we've all done in the military for, so many years.
Hmm.
And I also get to keep, working and doing important stuff in the veteran space, which can be tough and draining and dealing with bureaucracy and all that. So for me,
Hmm.
it's just an awesome, positive way. Yeah. And the teams we're working with, it's like a big family. I've really
That's
enjoyed it and
awesome.
am blessed to have the opportunity.
No, that's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And for anyone
Yeah.
who's interested in learning more about victory strategies, we're going to have a link to it in the description of this video. Angelina, thank you. Strike, thank you so
Yeah.
much for your time. It was a pleasure having you just on to talk all things leadership.
Thank you, Sarge. And like I said, you and Kai keep doing what you're doing because more people listen to what the conversations you guys are having. We'd be moving further faster, and that culture would keep changing. But you guys are making a huge difference. So I appreciate you.